Now, we are very excited to welcome here on the Centre Pass podcast the head coach of the Australian Diamonds, Lisa Alexander. Lisa, thank you for joining us this week.
Thank you very much.
Well, we've got a couple of things to speak to you about, and obviously with the Diamond selection just in our rearview mirrors. But first of all, we just want to kind of get a glimpse into the life of the Australian Diamonds head coach. What is it like being the head coach of the Diamonds? What are the ups? What are the downs? What do you like about it?
Oh, look, pretty much it's all up. I think anyone that kind of reaches the pinnacle of coaching in their country, with whichever sport it is, you kind of view it as living the dream, really, because you're doing the thing that you absolutely love, so it doesn't feel like work. I've always combined my professional work with netball coaching any case since I first started my professional career. So it's a joy and it's a great privilege. And I guess what you've got to be wary of all the time is that you are leading people and leading a system and a group of young people that are really keen and wanting to work hard, and so, there's great responsibilities around that. So I try and, I guess, match their work ethic that they're doing off the court with my work ethic as a coach, and hopefully they appreciate that and the work and effort that we do put into planning and preparing for tours and working with their coaches in the Suncorp Super Netball environment as well, to assist our athletes to be the best that they can be. And, to be perfectly honest, that's a pretty wonderful area to have to work in, where you're assisting people to hopefully achieve their dreams.
And there's obviously a lot of pressure that comes with being the head coach of the Diamonds. What would you say is the most stressful part of the job? It's a really good question. There's different times that are stressful. Selection's always stressful because you've got a finite, timeline that you've got to get things done, because people are waiting for information, and, you want to make the best decisions you possibly can. So that's always a bit of a stress, and you have to go through a process, and, the selectors and I work very hard together to make the best decisions we possibly can for the best interests of the team and the program. And then, you've got to deliver that information too. And sometimes it's really wonderful, and then other times it's not so wonderful, because you've got to tell people, they're not going to be in a team, or they're not going to be in a squad, or you have to deliver some information to them that they're not going to enjoy. So that's probably the most stressful part of the job, in terms of, that real direct, communication with athletes and other coaches as well, because the coaches feel it too. When they're in charge of programs and their players don't get into squads, they obviously feel part of that disappointment. But then there's the other side of it. So it's a bit of a roller coaster ride, really, that pressure. The other pressure that comes too is when we've got a lot of work on it all at once. I think, often in our sport it's forgotten that we're not AFL football. We haven't got heaps of dollars, and our support staff particularly work really hard for not a lot of reward, really, and so we probably ask our people to do a little bit more, and sometimes that can be quite stressful. As a leader of the sport, you understand that people have only got so much time and energy, and when you're asking them to keep on doing things in high performance, that does wear you down after a while. So that's why all of us have to, look after ourselves, our own health and well-being, and that's what I certainly try to do, and set a good example for my staff and also for the athletes.
Well, when you were talking about the pressures of selection, what do you take into consideration when selecting players for the Australian team?
We take in all the parameters of our selection policy, which includes watching Suncorp Super Netball games, previous international tests, training environments, squad camps, etc. So there's lots and lots of data that we use to discuss And I think that's what people forget, is that we're not necessarily picking a Suncorp Super Netball super team or, the best players in that team. We've actually got to pick a team and a squad that will combine together to play well for Australia. And the knowledge and understanding that we have of the international game is, what we rely on. And, we've got to beat England and New Zealand and Malawi and South Africa, and we've got, very strong athletes that we've got to be able to shut down in those particular countries, and also to keep adding to our game as the Australian Diamonds and the Australian way of playing. So it's a very complex decision-making process, and I can assure you and all the netball fans out there that we work really hard to make sure we make the right decisions. And we're not always going to get it right. It is actually, obviously it's up to the selector's discretion about how we pick that, and people just have to put faith in us that we're going to, we're doing all the right things, and that we watch every game, and we watch, we often re-watch games 3 times over to check for how people have performed and whether we've, our judgments have been correct in our view, and we have lots of discussion as well. We've also done research on the number of selectors that are probably the best number for this particular, decision-making process, and we have come up with, our research has shown that 3 is the right number in terms of making those decisions. As the head coach, I also have the final say, which I'm very grateful to have that opportunity to have that final say that's provided for me in the selection policy.
With selection, what sort of an impact does losing the experience of players like Laura Geitz, Maddie Robinson and Susan Pettit have on the team?
Oh, look, it's always, it's never going to be perfect or easy to cope with that, and it's not necessarily what you want all at once, but it is understandable. As I was explaining on radio this morning, part of it is that we're in a timeline situation where we have to make decisions about squads and get squads training for quad series, and that requires a 6-week training block. So that's part of the reason we had to make our decisions a bit earlier than we would have liked. And we will have spots open in our squad until after the the Suncorp Super Netball Grand Final. But also, we've got a really strong athlete system, a development system that we're very proud of, our pathways. So, with A&L games, with our underage squads and camps and the work that's done in our institutes, we've actually got a lot of work being done with younger athletes all the time. And so, we're very fortunate, in a fortunate position to have that talent coming through. And I think you've seen a lot of that talent out on the court this year for Suncorp Super Netball, which has been terrific. Your Kim Jenners, your Tara Hinchcliffes, your Sophie Garbins, your Kate Eddies. Kira Austin's been out there a couple of times, of course, Jess Anstis and Jamie Lee Curtis. Jamie Lee Curtis, Jamie Lee Price. I always get that wrong. Pardon the pun. But, it's that's what's great about our sport, is that we have got young players coming up through the ranks, and they don't just get put into squads, based on just the fact that they're young and talented. They have to actually show us that they're doing the work back in their Suncorp Super Netball environments, working really hard on their game and developing as athletes so that they, put themselves in the best position to be selected to the Australian Diamonds. And, that's where we're very fortunate. We've got those athletes ready to go, and, that's that continuous renewal and evolution of the Diamonds, which, we don't like to lose our stars of the game either, because we obviously dearly love them. We love the way they go about their business, but they all had to start at some stage as well. And I think our coaches of the past, Norma Plummer, Jill McIntosh and Joyce Brown, always, showed the way with introducing new and younger talent in each of our teams. So we've always had that regeneration and renewal.
Yeah, well, hopefully we've got some greats of Australia, some future greats of Australian netball coming up through that Australian system, and in a couple of years we see them dominating the world stage. Just back on a point you made earlier, you said that fans really have to trust the selectors and put your trust in you guys. How do you deal with some of that discontent from some fans regarding certain players not making a squad? How do you go about that? Do you listen to much of that, or do you read much of that on social media?
Yeah, we do from time to time. I'm across social media because, well, basically I have to be keeping an eye on the Diamonds and what they're putting out there. That's always a good coach to do that. And it's also important to understand our younger generation and what they're saying and what their views are. I think, we'd be silly not to listen to what the public are saying about things. I think you've got to keep it in perspective, though, that we're put in this position to make these judgments, and we know that not everyone's going to be happy with what we have come up with, and they're going to be very, emotional about that in many respects because they've got a lot invested in, certain athletes that they follow as fans. I know when I'm following AFL, I have my very strong views about things and differ very much sometimes from, what the head coach's decisions are about who's being on the field and so forth. But you just have to understand that in sport and that people want to follow players, and I think it's really exciting that netball's starting to get a real following for individual athletes in our sport. It's something we've wanted for a long time and wanted to work towards. And in fact, back in 2015, I remember saying to, our people at Netball Australia about, we needed to push forward our personalities for the World Cup. And of course, Shani Layton was a part of that, and Laura Geitz and Caitlin Bassett and those sorts of players. And at that time, they probably weren't as well known. So it's a matter of, continuing that marketing of our athletes and, talking with our fans and finding out what they enjoy and, trying to provide that connection with fans in the game. So, and part of that is discussion and robust discussion about selection, and it obviously gives lots of people lots to talk about.
What's the main focus heading into the Quad Series and Constellation Cup ahead of next year's World Cup?
Yeah, we really have to get ourselves focused on preparing for a tournament. I think that's probably been the biggest wake-up call for us, I guess, after the Com Games. Not that I thought we performed extraordinarily well at Com Games, apart from our final game. So, some of the netball I saw in those earlier games was sensational, and it really gave us, I guess, great positivity around the system and what we're working on. We've obviously got some things we need to address because, we don't want to come out with a performance like that in a grand final and the gold medal final and not have us at our best. So we're tweaking things in our physical preparation, also the way we go about preparing the athletes for a tournament, and the fact that it's very different to Suncorp Super Netball where, you've got your matches once a week and it's a different training regimen for that. We have to actually make sure that the athletes are prepared for those, day in, day out performances, and that's really tough. So we've got to make sure our training environment simulates that as much as possible. So we're going to have a fair focus on being able to back up and being resilient and, being able to put those consistent performances out there, whether it's in the training environment or the matches, so that, you see that real consistency of performance and we are able to dig deep and perform when it counts.
So in terms of the Super Netball finals that are coming up, what exactly are you looking for in players that will get them that final selection or that final hope of being selected?
Yeah, look, it's not one little thing. That's the whole thing. I can't, obviously I talk to individual players and give them feedback about things that they need to improve on and talk to their coaches about things as well. But it's not easy in an environment where they're trying to play their role for their team, and I'm and myself and the selectors are very understanding of that, certain players have certain roles to play. But there are some, I guess, what you call non-negotiables about what people need to do, and they definitely need to be able to play both sides of the game. Their attack and defence has to be spot on, and that means, if they've got a defensive bib on, they have to be attacking brilliantly down court and showing great skill. And then vice versa, our goal attacks and shooters and wing attacks need to be really top-level defenders as well. That's what we need at the very top level. The skills of the game have to be spot on, and they have to be able to execute under pressure. So when the pressure moments come, we need to see those athletes really putting that ball through accurately, or, getting that great intercept at the right time when it's needed, or do they, really shut down their opponent? So there's many facets to that, but it has to be overall, everything has to be excellent, and it has to be executed under pressure.
For netball as a sport, do you think it's good that international players are coming across to Australia and they've got the opportunity to play at our highest level?
Oh, I really do. As a netballer who loves the game from a global point of view, I think it's just sensational that we've got international athletes coming to our country. I'm really proud of Australia as a country. When I travel, people always say to me, they love our country, the fact that it's inviting mostly and a great place to live. So that's in itself is a fantastic thing for people from overseas to come to our country to live in our community and find what our way of life is like. But also to enrich our netball, I think that's what it's really done, is the imports that have come over. And I'm, even thinking back to Carla Borrego, who was part of the team when I was assistant coach at Adelaide Thunderbirds, how much she brought to the team in terms of her differences, her understandings, and the way she went about her business and the way she embraced her environment and how she taught us to do things differently. And I think that's been the greatest strength of the imports that have come in. It's also strengthened our game globally. Internationally now, netball is stronger because of this, and there's no doubt in my mind about that. Just look at South Africa and what's happened there, and also the fact that they've had, the coaching of Norma Plummer to really improve their performances. So it's all going well for netball on an international scale, because if we don't have that going well, then the sport may die. So we've got to really keep working on that. The trick is, I guess, from our point of view in Australia, is to make sure that those positions on the Suncorp Super Netball Court don't become, restricted to our own Australian development. And that's, what we're always mindful of from a Netball Australia point of view, is, are we going to, is the tipping point going to be too far in the other direction where, we end up like an EPL in England with the soccer that becomes, so full of imports that the English development of English athletes actually gets stopped. We need to be mindful of that.
Yeah, that's a great perspective to look at it. We'll just one final one. You've obviously had a look at a lot of the Suncorp Super Netball this season. We've got one round to go, and we've got 5 teams that are really in the mix for those final 4 spots in finals. Do you have a pick to take out the Suncorp Super Netball Premiership this year?
Do I have a tip?
Yeah.
Yes, I gave my tip this morning. I said the Firebirds, and I know that people will probably think, what? But I just think they've got the all-round game to get themselves all the way there. They can win away from home as well as at home. So I think they'll cope with the rigours of the finals a little bit better. They've clearly beaten Fever twice, so, that's a big plus for them. But I think the Lightning are also very dangerous at this stage. They've, really timed their run well. I did think the Vixens would be able to get themselves in there, but unfortunately they've had quite a bit of injury issues that they've had to deal with, so that's probably knocked their chances out. But, my tip's the Firebirds.
Okay, well, a very different one to a lot of other people, and but yeah, the Firebirds really looking strong towards the end of the season. Lisa Alexander, thank you very much for joining us here on the Centre Pass podcast this week.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for talking about our great sport.